Hi, it's Nicky, and thank you so much for stopping by because it's really hard to find a podcast to listen to these days, isn't it? Not. I think you'll like this though. It's called Be Someone, Not Everyone, and you're going to meet some really, really fascinating people. I'm not looking for super famous people, so don't think that Cher's going to come and sit next door to me. Well, she might, who knows? But what I were looking for is people that have had a life, had a bit of adversity, and come out all the better for it. So get yourself a pot of tea, sit yourself down, and I hope you enjoy it. See you in a bit. Can't tell you how many times I've clicked flipping record and not actually, I haven't clicked record halfway through. Hiya. Well, I'm going to introduce you to another one of my lovely friends today. And I have got the most interesting friends in the world. The most interesting people are the ones that have had a bit of life, that have got some experience. And I'm going to introduce to you now. Well, we met, crikey, in Denver, Colorado. Fuck knows what we were doing there. Honest to God, I think I was speaking. I think we might both have been speaking. But I were absolutely exhausted. We'd just done the transatlantic flight and then gone 5 hours in a taxi to some mountains somewhere. I don't even know where I was. And I couldn't find my room because it were all these chalets. Anyway, it was the middle of the night and walking towards me, I saw this man. And you know when you instantly, it's like, hello, you look interesting. Who are you? And that weekend, we spent a lot of time together. It's funny, all angels come back to you because we didn't see each other for, crikey, a few years. And then we're doing these free lockdown Zooms, and who should be on one of them but this man, ladies and gentlemen, the very, very unique and interesting Mr. Richie Moore.
Oh, thank you.
I've just said to him now, just before we set all this up, I was saying, you'll have to come a bit closer because I look like a big boiled egg and you look like a small boiled egg on here. So, yeah. Right, well, this is how I should have introduced you. Gay dad, yogi, near-death experiencer. Have you got some stuff to tell us? So let's start at the beginning. Start at the beginning and your early life.
Well, it was pretty normal to start with, really. Maybe a few traumatic childhood experiences, nothing out of the unusual, really. Losing family members just in a tragic way. But I think that's where my bubble burst when I realised that actually life wasn't as rose. My little childhood vision had changed to something, and I grew up quite quickly because I didn't want to be a child. It was too painful. It was just too painful, too sensitive, and I just didn't fit in anywhere. I couldn't concentrate at school, different friendship groups, and most of it I was bullied for. What I know is basically my sexuality, which made things twice as worse. So I couldn't apply myself. I didn't focus. I didn't get any of my studies really finished.
You didn't need them?
No. Well, ultimately, no.
I can't bloody count. I haven't got an O-level to shake a stick at.
Yeah.
But you know what I would say to you is, and you will see it in your work, most geniuses don't fit in, Richie. So you just mentioned your sexuality there. And, you know, no shit, Sherlock, you're gay. At what age did you... I've got a lot of gay friends, you know, and they're the most creative people in the world. And I think I know why. One of the reasons why, not just because they've maybe got a bit more is the word advanced feminine side, but because of what they've been through. So,
Yeah.
but you know, you're more of a spring chicken than I am, but when you were younger, you know, to be gay was perhaps not as easy as it is now. Tell us about the day that you realised that women weren't for you and you had to tell your parents and you had got to go in this incarnation to the rest of your life being Richie Moore gay man.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's well, there's two ways I look at that. There's the day I realised, and then there's the day I accepted.
Tell us
And
about both.
they're two ways. I think the day that I realised came quite early because it's quite simple. You, in a normal sense, you're in the playground and the boys are looking at the girls and the girls are looking at the boys, and I'm in the middle going, oh, you know, and you have that realisation that my feelings aren't adding up in the normal way, and that sent me on that trajectory of right. I can make myself straight. I will fancy a girl. And off I went on a mission. And then some years later, I mean, I was bullied all through school for that reason. And I think it was about 17 and it was really building up on me. And I remember thinking to myself, I would literally rather be dead than have to come out with this and tell anybody. All the stories, what you hear in the background, people talking about it, all the slang words, the nasty words, the news even, you know, it's like the whole, think about 80s, the whole AIDS thing, you know, it's all going on in the background as a small child. I obviously grew up in the 80s. It's all going on in the background. And I just thought, I can't do this. There was absolutely no way. But equal measure, I knew I couldn't pretend to be straight. It wouldn't sit.
Did you know any other gay people? I mean, did you have anybody that you could relate to or talk to? Or
No. And it was under, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think it was section 28. We weren't allowed to talk about it at school. And in hindsight, I bumped into a school teacher and she came up to me and she said, how's things now, blah, blah. She said, and she just held my hand and she said, I knew you were struggling, but we weren't allowed to help you. And I thought, my God. And I thought, yeah, I was struggling the whole time, but with that legislation in place, it wasn't ever discussed. So it was the most lonely experience ever.
What a society. What a society. What a situation to be in. Yeah, and lonely. I mean, I were always a little bit different at school and I can relate to that. But I guess that you would now be able to tell me what that loneliness has given you now.
Oh, yeah, strength. Incredible, because I mean, it's not literally true. Of course, I could have reached out to people, you know, but it didn't feel like that because of everything that was going on in my head. It was like, right, you've just got to get on with this and you've got to cope. And I think it helped me build the tenacity that has helped me with more serious issues later on in life. Not that there's a hierarchy to these things, but in context of my life, it's certainly, I've had more challenging things to deal with as I've gotten older.
Which we'll be hearing about. Tell us about when you had to tell your family, because obviously, you know, that was a massive thing back then.
I couldn't bring myself to tell my father at all. I had to send him a letter when he went away for work. So I popped it in his briefcase and left that to be because I couldn't face it. He'd got different views to me. And that was a major thing for me, and it took a long time to work up to that. And it was only because an aunt said to me after coming out, don't you think it's time you told your father before somebody else tells him? So I ducked out of that one, I must admit. But my mum, she confronted me. She'd let's say she'd found some evidence that
I'm not even going to ask what that is because I won't understand it.
No. So as a mum does, and she came out and asked me, and I remember I was doing my hair at the time. I was standing in the mirror doing my hair, what a cliche. And she asked me if that's what I liked and how I want. And I just looked myself right in the mirror and thought, you've got two choices here. You can lie, and my mum would believe me. she would have done, or you tell the truth because this is your opportunity. And I did, and I just turned to her and said, yeah, I do. And then we obviously had the tears and the, went through that whole thing. And
What was she
surprisingly,
crying for? What was she crying for? I mean, I know times were different, but
yeah,
was she
yeah.
crying for you or was she crying for herself?
I think there was a mixed bag there, really. She honestly said to this day that she never realised, which is to much amusement of my brothers, because they pull out photos of me all the time, and they're like, "Really? Look at those cycling shorts. Look at that fluorescent top you wear," and really jib me for it. But she said she never. I think it's the mother's innocent eyes, and to realise that I'd kept it all to myself, and I think she automatically knew that the situation wasn't ideal for me, and the reason that I lied. And then we go through the progression of, oh, there won't be grandkids and all that sort of muddled up sort of stuff. And but it was all fine, and that's where it changed, because she was the most important person in my life. And it was like, if my mum knows and my mum doesn't care, feck everybody else. And that's when I came out, because there was no, and that was excluding my father. So I went about my business then, and it was only in hindsight I was told, oh, don't you think you better
Yeah, you better mention it to your dad. How did
yeah.
you feel when you were writing that letter, Richie?
Well, I actually wrote the letter saying, I know why we don't get along, and I know you won't want me here, so I'm just giving you the heads up, and I'll be gone by the time you get back.
And what happened?
Well, I went out for a meal for a friend's graduation, and I tell you how long ago it was. We were on like Orange network phone. It was this old flip phone, and we went to the lovely restaurant in the middle of the countryside. So there was no service, nothing. And surprisingly, I got a voicemail when I got back to answering the phone. Well, picking up the voicemail, and he just said, "You don't have to go anywhere. You're my son, and I still love you."
Oh,
And I was like, I didn't know what to do, or and that really swiped me, because
yeah.
something I've learned much later in life: the stories that go around and we create as children aren't necessarily the truth or what we're seeing, and certainly when we had a more recent discussion a couple of years ago, it was quite surprising actually what he went through in that process, and how he blamed himself. And a lot of it wasn't about me, it was his generation and him thinking that he'd done it to me, he'd created that within me or something, that he was to blame and stuff. So it is interesting, the stories we create as we go along. They're not always, I mean, they're your truth, of course, because it's your experience, but they don't always add up to somebody else's perspective.
No. Well, you're right in that we all create our own truth, and actually nothing is real and everything is real. I mean, that was a strange, I know I'm a little bit older than you, but that was a strange generation. They were racist, they were homophobic, they were angry, it was post-war, they didn't know what love was. The kids were put out. I mean, I was born in 1958, and I know that I would put out in my pram for 4 hours at 6 in the morning. You don't pick it up, even if it's snowing, poor little bugger out in garden. You bring it in, you feed it, you put it back out again, and you pick it up for 20 minutes on a night. And I don't know if your family showed emotion. Mine certainly didn't. I mean, the L word was never mentioned. So, because this was such an emotional Vesuvius, I mean, had they been a very affectionate family before, or was it like, right, I've got to show my boy that affection and that understanding, or I'm going to lose it? Or, had it always been that way?
It's an interesting mix, actually, because I'd say father's side, definitely not comfortable about talking about anything like that. And that's why that message was as brief as, you don't have to go anywhere, I love you as a son, that was it. And even when we approached the subject when he came home and I said, look, clearly you want to talk about something, it was like, no, you've made your choice and we'll leave it at that. And I was like, okay, I can live with that. That's acceptance as best as I could expect really. But, my mum's very affectionate and very loving. But interestingly, in her words, from the moment I could walk, I've never needed anybody. And, again, something we've talked through later in life, I was off on my own trajectory. And so it wasn't that it wasn't there. And interestingly, it was my mum that I came out to, and all the love and affection was there, and she made it okay. And that's why I was like, I'm okay with mum. It's all good.
So you were obviously having relationships, and I don't know about you, I find it really hard. Anybody that knows me, apart from Danny, my son, who, is like, I am the original smother mother, because I never want him to go through what I did, even though I didn't realise. I thought everybody lived like I lived. But I find it really hard to show affection. I've only literally learned that in the last few years. So what were your relationships like as a result of, the funny bloody thing is, your mum were upset because she thought she wouldn't have any grandchildren, and you're the only one that's produced any.
Yeah. We were the first. And it's a funny one, because of this division of affection and non-affection. I'm exactly that. So I can do it, but I have to make a concerted effort to do it. And I'm the sort of person that I love to cook. So me cooking for the family is how I express my love. But I don't necessarily go around hugging and kissing them all.
Yeah.
I give people a hug. I like to have, a hug here and there, but I'm not the touchy-feely, that sort of type. It's very much given in different ways of.
But it's a different doing it and feeling it.
Yes.
Different doing it and feeling it. And that's the thing, it's like we all hug and kiss, but you can do it. You don't necessarily have to feel it. My way of showing people affection is buying them things, buying them presents, taking them places. So that's fascinating, really. And your childhood, I know that you deal with a lot of people that have had traumatic childhoods now. We're going to talk about that. But we've got a lot to thank and blame our childhoods for, haven't we? I always say, and I said it on one of my Zooms, we re-met on one of my Zooms, but, how much of you is real and how much is the construct of somebody else's fear and beliefs? That's the thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you start looking at yourself and you move forward, I'm going to say, because I know you're okay with swearing, it's unfucking yourself.
Yeah.
It's actually unlearning. We have inside us, we have the solutions, we have the answers. It's getting rid of all the crap that everybody else has put onto us, because mom, dad, brother, sister, auntie, uncle, granddad told us this is the way to do it.
And they didn't know any better because they were frightened. I'm just writing this down, Richie. We're going to register unfuckyourself.com, because I think you make a fortune. Unfuckyourself.com. Log on soon, everybody. So, you're a deeply spiritual man, and, even more so with the experience that you had. So when you were growing up, when you were younger, did you have a sense of something bigger than us, or is that something that came later?
No, it was always there, but again, it was something else to fight with. I know it was there because I've always been looked after. Whatever the situation, I've always left the party just before it kicked off, if you know what I mean. I've always been guided. I couldn't have voiced what that was, or as my friends will say, you'll fall in shite and you'll come out smelling of roses. And I know that's been in the background, and because it was just me and that, but I don't, self-imposed a lot of it because I pulled out because I felt so different. But I knew there was something, but I'd get shot down for being a know-it-all. And in hindsight, I didn't know it all, but I was tuned into something that was all of it, and it guided me and it helped me. And I did always seem to find the answer or find a way through. There was always a solution, and it's still that way now. It's when I tune in, it's all there.
But again, it was that generation, because you go to church on a Sunday, blah, blah, blah. And anything that was outside their little paradigm of life wasn't real, because they could only accept what they were told. And of course, society is a lot freer now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us about the day you met your lovely husband. Oh, I've not met yet.
No. But yeah, that's very true. Very true. He's a good follower of you, actually. He's an incredible man. He's the yang to my yin, without a doubt. We're polar opposites, but we meet right in the middle and balance each other out. It's wonderful. He was actually a friend of my best friend's, who I didn't meet. I was flying around the world at the time, doing an incredible job, and we kept missing, and my best friend would be like, blah blah blah, Lee, blah blah blah, and I was like, who's Lee? And he's like, you've met it. And I was like, oh, no, I haven't. And time went on, and then one night we went to the theatre to watch this comedian, and we went to the bar afterwards, and in walked Lee with a friend of his, spoke to Kev, and I went, who the feck is that? And he went, oh, that's that Lee. And I went, I have not met him before. I was like, and it was just something. And anybody that knows me, I haven't been a relationship person at all. And I certainly don't react like that to people. And I knew there was something, and I was like, oh, really? Again, ships in the night.
Yeah.
Nothing happened from that. I was flying, traveling and whatever. And nothing really happened until I think it was a Sunday afternoon, and we'd bumped into each other again collectively as a group, and he asked my friend for my phone number, and I was like, oh my God, and I was all giddy. And I remember my business partner at the time, she was like, this is very unlike you, what's going on here? And I was like, I don't know. I said, there's something. So we got round to having a date, and that was it. I just knew. Didn't know what, but I knew that there was something, or there would be something. It was, and then he went off playing the field. Never heard from him. I went off again, traveling, doing my own thing. But I still knew there was something. Keep a long story as short as possible. We went out for dinner collectively as friends one afternoon, and I'd avoided him, to be honest. After that, I used to think Kev would say, oh, Lee's coming round, we're going to go dinner or whatever, and I'd jump on a plane to New York or something and go like, oh, I'm out of this, thinking, I guess maybe I was playing a bit hard to get, I don't know. And this dinner came round Sunday afternoon, and we sat there and we're chatting away, and we'd ignored everybody else at the table. We were like, and in that conversation, we realised, asking questions, well, why are you single? And, oh, well, I don't see the world that way. I see it this way. And all our values and ideas just sort of aligned. And by the end of the dinner, it was like, actually, you know what? And from that point onwards, inseparable.
Wow. So 2 things here. One, what were you doing on your fancy schmancy job that took you all over the world? And 2, do you believe then, how do you believe that relationships, I guess we'd call it soulmates, work? Do you think that before you came here, you two had arranged all this, or do you think it's all just a chance? So first question, and then the second question.
So first question is, what was I doing flying around the world? Yeah. Okay. So I'd been traveling in its truest sense to find myself. I didn't find myself. I just found a lot of other people, if I'm honest. But it was good. It was good fun, and it was great to be open to a lot of different cultures and experiences. But when I came back from that, I realised that I couldn't do a real job again. There was no way on this earth that I could fit into any kind of normality. So I became cabin crew for a big international airline, and we won't talk about, and and the time of my life. absolute
Brilliant.
time of my life. So I could get paid, keep traveling.
Have a nice uniform.
Nice, gorgeous
Meet loads of
uniform.
meet loads of people. I do like them uniforms, I have to say.
Designer uniform. I've
Oh,
still
I know
got a
it was
couple.
then. Yeah, oh yeah, I know it was then.
Yeah.
So do you believe that all this was engineered by some power before you came here, or is it just a chance?
No, there's definitely a power there, but again, that power can be redirected at any time. So I think it's that, when people say we've got this free will,
Hmm.
which we have, and I think, you can be shown, it's that whether you're on the right path or not is how often people describe it. And I think things are aligned for you. And when you get in alignment with them, it's just, poof, it just
Yeah.
happened. But
And he was aligned for you. Do you think he was
absolutely,
aligned for you? Yeah.
yeah, not
I
at first. Not at first. I think the bigger picture, it was kind of there, and not at first because he had things to do, and I was, we were in different places. But ultimately, and then when you align yourself with it, that's when it happens. That's the
I
difference.
can't keep one for 6 freaking weeks, Richie. So I'll have to try harder or do something. Anyway,
Fine.
so tell
That's
us about. I open my mouth. That's what I do. If I kept my freaking mouth shut, it'd be all right. So tell us. Let's move on a bit.
yeah,
And you had a very serious illness, and I remember looking at that and seeing that you were actually, there was a post that said you were terminal.
yeah.
Tell us about what were happening to you. How did you know? How did you feel? I cannot imagine going through that. Tell us, just take us through it.
I was very much focused on health, well-being, enjoying life in equal measure. But I was veggie, vegan, taking care, really did
Mm,
take care of myself. I'd got the luxury of going, God knows where in the world, and bumping into the most interesting people, and, running on South Beach and all this. And it was what you'd consider a healthy lifestyle, but still with a lot of enjoyment, got many qualifications in partying and the rest of it. But, it was all good. It was all good. But that day, I'd even been to the gym actually that morning, and I'd run 5K, but I'd had a niggling stomach problem for a couple of months previous, and nobody could put a finger on it. And I'm sitting there going, well, I'm fit and healthy, it's all, So it resulted in me having the camera down to see what was going on. They took the pictures they needed. That was it. Off I went, oh, it'll all be fine. We'll find out. I was convinced actually I'd got a stomach ulcer. Called us into the hospital, and it wasn't. It was actually a rare form of lymphoma that they told me that if I didn't have immediate treatment, I would be sick within a few days and most certainly dead within 5 weeks.
my God.
And
Do you accept that news to start with? Do you actually accept it, or do you just not believe it? Do you think it's a mistake? And I just can't imagine.
no, I think my initial reaction was, fuck off, I ran 5K this morning. I was like, no, really? And they were like, no, I don't think you understand. So
And what did Lee do? Because he'd have been sat at side of you.
yeah, he was absolutely sat there with me. And his words were, he wished he'd have videoed it, because I sort of went into this autopilot. Actually, I'm going to call it, I was actually so present in the moment
Mm.
that I wasn't thinking about what I was saying. I was just there, and I was talking to that doctor, and I went, right then, what do we do? Can we cut it out? He went, no. He said, that's not an option. I went, okay then. So what, it went through what else can we do? Solution, give me. And he went, no. He said, there is only one option. He said, and that's intensive chemotherapy, which may or may not in itself kill you.
How
Uh,
old were you? How old were you?
36.
And then you had to go and tell your family. And by that time, you'd adopted 2 boys,
Boy and a girl.
a boy
Yeah,
and a girl, or a boy and a girl.
yeah,
And how, I mean, I think that sometimes it's much harder to deal with other people's emotions in trauma than it is of your own. You've got
yeah,
control over yourself.
yeah,
That must have been one of the most difficult things, because you don't have to have that conversation once, you got to keep having it.
yeah. So the answer to that was I didn't. I didn't. I kept it to myself because one of my things that that hasn't served me well, and part of the problem has always been I can deal with things by keeping them to myself better than other people can. So I've internalized a lot of stuff over my life, and I took on everything they'd said. The treatment again was to be locked in and out. Well, not locked, but in my mind it was locked because I'm all about travel and freedom. You know, I'm outside lad. I kept horses all my life. Ridden horses, and it was the complete opposite. And it was intensive chemotherapy, 4 months in an isolation ward. You can't go anywhere. Chemo every day, and I was like, fuck off. I was like, no, absolutely no chance. I went, I'll go away. I said, I'll sort this out myself. And he was like, you don't understand. And I was like, no, I do. Leave it with me. I'll come back to you. And he was like, no, the bed's waiting for you upstairs now. He said, this is how it's going to go. And I went, no, this is not how it's going to go. My health, I'm in control. Yes, I'm consulting you. I don't. Well, and then he went on the defensive. He argued about, well, there's no point in you getting a second opinion. They'll only agree with me, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's fine. I don't need a second opinion. I said, that would be, you all study the same subject. Well, I know you're going to come to the same conclusion. I want to go away. I want to see what natural options and things are available to me.
But then the terror that you must have been, or were you just in shock? And we're going to talk about, because, spoiler, but I've already said it, you had a near-death experience. Did you feel at that point that you were being guided by some higher power to the altar? So what was that? Was that somebody talking in your head? Was it a feeling in your heart? What was it?
It was the inner knowing. It's, for me, I have a knowing, not from my head knowing. It's like I know, my being knows. And interestingly, it was the consultant that was trying to put the terror into me. And the conversation went, and why Lee found it amusing in hindsight. I mean, obviously he was just as stunned because what came out, I challenged him. I went, no, I said, you're projecting your fear on me. I'm not taking that. I said, if I need to get well, then I'm not going to take fear from you. Oh, well, you need to do this. You need to. And I went, no. I said, you can't tell me what I need. I'll choose what I need. I'm in control. This is going to be my journey. I'll work it out. Well, this will happen to you. I went, no, you don't know.
They didn't bloody know Richie more, did they?
No, and it sounds all very, very cocky, but I'd got this inner knowing, and I could see crystal clear that he was projecting all this stuff. Well, I've seen this happen. I went, yeah, but you haven't seen how I'm, leave me to it.
So tell us briefly about what you did that were different, and then I want to know about when you literally went upstairs and came back.
So I went away and told them that I'd be finding my natural solutions to the problem, which I did. I did varying things, from oxygen therapies. I was using cannabis oil. I was in touch with the hospital. But I was adamant there was no way, because I got a belief that chemo was going to kill me. And that was the strongest thing. But I must tell you something, because this is what really set me on this journey, I suppose. We came home from the hospital that afternoon. We'd been there hours. It was dark. We decided we weren't going to tell the children because it was going to be traumatic for them.
How old were the children at this point?
We were probably 11 and 12, maybe. Well, 2 years ago. So 12 and 13. 12 and 13. So I said, no, I'm not gonna say anything. We stood out on the terrace outside thinking, what the fuck we're gonna do, you know? We were listening to the doctor's advice, listening to what I was knowing. I said, I just need to know that I'll be okay and we can get on with this. It'll be fine. And we're there arm in arm. We look at the clock, 2020. And we were like, look at that. Nod from the universe. Then we looked up, the biggest shooting star we have ever seen went straight across the sky, right in front of us. We looked at each other, then I went, it's going to be all right. The universe has got me back. Wow. Whatever we choose. And that's what gave me the determination. We asked for a sign and it was bam on the clock and then with a star.
Do you know what? The thing is that people can't really argue with what you're saying, because when people talk about alternative treatments, you know, they think of some fucker wafting a feather over your head and, you know, clapping their hands and jingling some bells. But I have to believe you, because I know that you were terminally ill and you're here and you're fit. So something happened from there to now that was bigger than us. And I believe you did have that sign. I've had signs myself. So, you know, I totally believe you, but you must get people going, well, he's doing this for money or he's doing this for attention or.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's when I didn't do anything that you'd probably call out there. You know, I was having like intravenous vitamin C and I was having ozone therapy. They were all science-based stuff. Yeah. I mean, the medical, you know, they're very, caught up on the drug side of things. So then it's not something they entertain, but I was seeing a doctor for those therapies and things. It wasn't. So that gave me the reassurance that the avenue I was going to take was the right one. And that's when I thought, right, I need to make an example of this. And it wasn't to impress anybody or be clever, but there were a lot of people to tell. There were a lot of conversations to have. And I thought, no, I've got to hone this down. And that's why I took to Facebook and I did the post. And I wanted to prove to people that there is another way. And whatever you're told, it's your journey. Because I think sometimes, and power to the doctors, you know, I'm not knocking them at all, but there's this mentality that you've got to roll over like a dog and do exactly what they say. And you've got to have open dialogue. You've got to have a conversation. My doctor was not interested. He couldn't stand the sight of me. He still can't. He's blanked me in the corridor at the hospital. He still does, because he wasn't interested in what I was doing. It was his way or no way.
No way. But very few people can actually take responsibility for their own life. If they're told that's what you are, go away, you're going to die, you've got 5 weeks, we're going to try this, but actually they would believe that. And one of the things that really stuck out for me when we talked about this before, you talked about how you meditated when you were having the chemotherapy and how you saw it quite differently. Just tell us, because there will be people going through that process right now listening to this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a bit of background that led me to this point, because it's what the biggest lesson from the whole thing. I was very determined to fix this cancer in my stomach. I was, adamant, and I was defying the odds. I was going back weekly and having my bloods checked, and they couldn't understand why they weren't changing. And I was going, because of the stuff that I'm doing. And the doctors were even as blatant to say, you can't prove it. And I'm like, I'm sitting here and hello, you've got the results there. Well, we don't understand. However, I wasn't solving it on every level. I wasn't solving it on the emotional level and the spiritual level. So I did start to get sick, and I did end up going into hospital and took an integrated approach to medicine, which I'm all for. I'd got my own angle. I had to look at my own beliefs, because again, I was convinced it was going to kill me by having the chemotherapy. It got to a point where I had to sort of go, I need more. I do need more help here. And if this is what I'm being offered alongside what I'm doing, and I can do it all, then I'm gonna take this as the universe is providing me with a solution.
What caused that cancer for you?
It was all the emotional shit that I'd buried, suppressed in my stomach, relating to all the bullying, the crap that I'd created with my father. And it was quite literally in my stomach, eating me alive. Now, because I'm a psychotherapist and worked in this field for a while, I was going under the guise of, oh yeah, I'm resilient, I'm a really good therapist. I wasn't. I was burying my shit. I was hiding it.
That's interesting, and I hope that anybody that is going through a similar situation will listen to what you've just said, because we've only just really started to talk about emotion and energy and what it can do to you. So, you know, but I completely agree that, I think you're right. Take us to the near-death experience. I am fascinated by near-death experiences. There's two things I watch every night before I go to sleep, bizarrely enough. I like to watch about alien abductions.
Yeah.
I watch somebody talking, an experiencer talking every night, and I like to listen to somebody telling me about a near-death experience, because those people, you can tell when people are lying. Most of those people aren't, and I love it because it just opens our universe out. Tell us what happened, Richie.
Yeah, and it's one I'm still learning to articulate, because it really is an experience. So I had a tooth abscess, and I was being all arsey about taking antibiotics, and ultimately that made me very sick. And within 3 weeks, in fact, it's about 2 years ago to the day I started getting sick.
Wow.
Within 2 week period from now, I dropped to 6 stone. I couldn't eat. I couldn't walk. I'd become paralyzed from the waist down. I was bedridden. I was still refusing to go in hospital. I was still refusing to have chemotherapy, even that, they said, it'll extend your life. And eventually I gave in, and they took me into hospital while they looked for a hospice room bed for me. And it was the big lesson there was I had to ask for help. I had to hold my hands up, because I was so defiant before. I'm doing this, I'm doing it on my own, and your belief system, you can use it positively, you can use it negatively. And I think I'd taken it to extremes. So I was taken into hospital. They were sorting out, I think they told us that I'd probably got 6 days left at best, and that the cancer had now spread up my spine into my brain. And I was like, no. And these are great things to say to me, because I go, no, you're not God. You're not telling me, when I'm dying, you're not telling me this. And it worked quite well with me. Best thing to do, don't tell me not to do something, because it's exactly what I will do. So I was taken in, given drugs to make me feel better and alleviate the pain. Is indescribable, but served me well now. So to get the bigger picture, they decided to send me into an MRI scanner, so they could see the extent of, the paralysis and where it had spread to and all the rest of it. And it was full body. I think I was in there for about an hour and a half, something like that, I was told. And it didn't matter to me lying there for an hour and a half, because I could barely move. I'd got no energy to do anything. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. It was like, but I knew that I needed to control my mind. If I was to lie there and have to keep dead still, I needed to control my mind. So I thought, well, meditation, that's what you do. So I was put into the MRI scanner, and whether the magnets helped, I don't know. I really don't know. But I meditated on love, and I focused on everybody I loved, the feeling of love, even the word love, visualizing the word, and any connection I could get to it. And I lay there, and I don't really know what happened, other than I was somewhere else. and it was completely white. There was absolutely nothing, but I knew that it was everything. Everything. There was no dialogue. There was no man on the pearly gates or any of that nonsense. It was nothing, but it contained everything. It was like every question I had was answered without me even asking. It was this incredible knowing and just like bliss. And it was just there in front of me.
Is that
And
heaven, Richie?
I'd say it's the best description I could give of it. It was just everything in that nothingness of
Were
just,
there any other souls there?
again, I could feel it all. It was like, it was just, it's so hard to articulate because I could feel that, but it wasn't like I could see anything. It wasn't like, it was a feeling.
Mm.
And it was that support and just knowing, and it was like, yeah, you've got this. It's like we create all these questions going through life, and it was like, I didn't need to ask a question because it was like the knowing was so strong that it was like completion almost. It was like, yeah, there's no question to ask. It was, yeah. And I didn't see any like personalities or spirits or anything like that. It was this just, it was, I don't know, in an instant, it was like every question is like, they say your life goes before you. It was, it happened so quickly. I didn't even go through one by one. It was, yeah, I've got it sort of thing. But again, no words, no dialogue. These are all just feelings. And then I sort of looked, and it was very much to my left. I looked to my left and I could see this world. It was that looking down on it. But everything was separated. And everything was separated into love and what you'd call, I suppose, non-love, the opposite. It was just this clear division. It was just as it was this world, just as you and I look at it now, but I could see everything was divided. And I was looking at that, and then I was looking in this direction, and it was like, well, that certainly feels better than that. But I was just an observer of it. And then I remember the words in my head, and it sounds like something I'd say, but it wasn't my voice. Even if it was, it didn't have an accent, and it just said, "You've got too much shit to do." And as quick as that, I was, Richie, we're pulling you out of the MRI now. And I was like, okay. And I came out of that and I was like, I've got this. And
Were you crying? Were you crying? Were you deeply emotional? Were you,
yeah,
how did that feel?
do you know what it was like? It's a vibration. Had this vibration. I mean, I was in the wheelchair that, they were lifting me around and stuff. So but I had this energy that was inside me that was radiating out of me. And it wasn't physical because I was, in a god awful state. It wasn't physical at all.
And then you got better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell us what that felt like the day that you absolutely realised that against all and I remember seeing those I am terminal posts. You looked like a tiny little boy sat there. It was like, I wouldn't have given you 3 days from those photos. And for anybody that, when we do this, we'll put a little photograph up because it is a miracle. There is no question what happened to you was a miracle that you made happen. What do you think they sent you back for? What's the shit?
Yeah, what's the shit to do? And again, this is something to explain. Because you've had a near-death experience, it doesn't mean that, oh, that's it, it's all sorted. I've still had to do a hell of a lot of work to understand it, asking continuously, what is that shit? What am I capable to do? And certainly I've realized that it's my life experience is to use that. It is to use that because really I haven't got anything else. if we, if we cut out the physical of, owning this and owning that, yeah, I've got some lovely stuff. That's great. But really, when it's all stripped back and it's me, I've just got my experience.
Isn't that what we've all got, though? It's just that
Yeah.
most people don't realise, because, of course, the other miracle that happened that I know, you talk about now and you do a lot with, is you were going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life. That's what they told you. And, tell us about what your mindset was around that. Because I remember you saying that they brought you home and you sat there in a bloody wheelchair.
Yeah, well, I'd been through this intensive chemotherapy. Well, initially they weren't even going to give me that. It was, they came to me quite surprised after the MRI and said the cancer's still contained in your stomach, because they were convinced I was riddled and this is why I was paralyzed. And it wasn't. It was still contained in my stomach. And they went, this could be treatable. And I was like, and they were like, but we don't think you're strong enough to handle it. I was like, I'll decide if I'm strong enough to handle it. and so I did. So I took this chemotherapy, but the belief really was that it had affected my nervous system and I wasn't going to be able to. So it was maybe, but doctors, you see, they've all got their specialist areas and they're very focused on it. And it was, when I was in that isolation ward, it was about chemo and killing cancer, and that was it. They weren't entertaining anything else. It was like, oh, you may get better, you may not, you may walk, may not. It was just, there was nothing out to it at all. And while I was in bed, not doing anything, I was wasting away. The chemotherapy's ripping through me. And as you mentioned about me doing the meditation, actually, because that was a really important factor, I used to say thank you to the chemo every time they plugged it in, because I knew that if I went on despising it, if I went on hating it, how could I expect that to heal me? How could I expect that to help? So I used to meditate with this, just saying thank you. I used to imagine that the oils and the things that I was taking were protecting every good cell in my body, and the chemo was washing out every negative cell, every cancerous cell that needed to go, and it was flushing out my system. And I'd lie there in meditation just saying thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you. And that's how I got through it. But yeah, for 4.5 months later, I got me a little Madge scooter. They used to call me Madge in the hospital. So I got my little scooter. And yeah, nobody could give me an answer whether I would get better. I was having excruciating pains still. But that phase was over. And I wasn't going to accept that. There was no way. I wasn't what would you say, a happy person in a wheelchair. It drove me insane because I want to be over there and having to rely on somebody but again, it's that lesson, as my mum said, never needed anybody from the moment I could walk. Well, here was an experience where I needed to learn that you couldn't walk and you did need somebody. Came full circle. It's incredible. Mm. So how that was going to happen, I don't know. Physiotherapy were of the attitude of, well, you've got a frame, you've got a chair, you'll manage, you'll be all right. And I was like, no.
And how were Lee and the kids? Because that's like it's an identity shift for you, but also for your kids and Lee, it's an identity shift.
Yeah. Oh yeah, completely. I mean, especially as they had to push me around, and, Lee did a grand job in some senses, but I remember we were in Asda actually. We took a trip to Wales to see my friend who got a caravan there, and he just left me in the middle of an aisle, and I'm like, you can't just leave me, and it was such, and I was getting ratty, he was getting ratty, and it was a real experience to get through, to not be able to accept that I couldn't do it myself, to accept the help, and not to be some cantankerous old, chap in a wheelchair. I had to make peace with all of that. They had to make peace with it. And do you know what? Humor. I sent you that video, didn't I?
Yeah.
We laughed the whole time. We just had to laugh about it.
Humor fixes an awful lot of things.
Yeah, I tell you, the way some people treat people in chairs, that was tough. Mm. People talking over my head to Lee and not me, or stepping in front of me and just completely ignoring me while they dealt with somebody who was able-bodied up. And it was, yeah.
But that's something you can help fix now. How did you get out of that wheelchair?
Yoga, fundamentally. I've done yoga since 2007, and like most people, go to the odd class here, go there. I did a few retreats, loved it, enjoyed it. It was part of my life, but it definitely wasn't a daily practice. Definitely wasn't something, you know, I'd even identify as a yogi. It was just something I enjoyed doing. So I decided that no, I was going to, and I did some in my bed. I used to just do little yoga moves in my bed and try and move this and just do that, and like chair. Then it went from my bed to my chair. So I'd do a little bit in my bed. So I used to get woken up in the hospital every 2 hours periodically to take me blood, to check that I was still alive, to check that my heart was still, all that sort of thing. So I didn't sleep a lot. So I used to think, right, so it's got to be meditation, or it's got to be yoga. And I'd had this, I don't know, again, the knowing that if there was any way that this was going to change, it was going to be the yoga. And so at the earliest opportunity, I think it was the January, I'd come out of hospital in the early November, and it was the January. And I went, I want to go back to yoga. And I got there, and I'd got used sticks and whatever, and I lay down on my mat, and I think I rolled my head, did a bit, everyone else is doing their thing, and just ever so quietly, I just sobbed. And it just came out, and it just came out. And I'm not never been one for crying and being public about it or anything like that. It was this just gentle sob, but I knew something was happening. And I was like, no, something's going to happen here with my mat. And I kept going, and I kept doing, and even some poses, you know, I would use sticks, and I'd just be anything I could do, any little bits that I could do. But I was in the presence of everybody that was doing. And you know, there were times when I couldn't stand up. I still struggle to stand on one leg now, you know, because I'm still developing muscles and things like that. But it took me on a journey that healed me on a physical level, but also the mental and emotional level and the spiritual level. And again, it was like the universe went, there you go. That's what you need to do. And I just kept having this message all the time. Just do the yoga. Just do the yoga. Don't get caught. Just do the yoga. So
two miracles in your life. One, that you're alive. Two, that you actually, there's three miracles in your life. So there's the fact that you're here. There's the yoga and you can walk. And then tell us about your kids. And I want to know, I do know another gay couple that adopted two boys. And they said with both of them, the second they saw them, they knew that they had been together in another life. And one of these young boys actually went to his father when he was 6 years old and said, Daddy, you know I was only little when I first met you, but I knew straight away you would always be my daddy, and you always will be. And, so did you have any of those experiences? What do your kids think about? I mean, they're going to be coolest kids in school now, aren't they? Gay dads. They're going to be the coolest.
Well, we're hoping so. It didn't quite work out that way for our lad, really. He's old, he's off in college and stuff now, but he used to get a bit of grief for it, to be honest, and he suffered. But I'll tell you, he's been one of my greatest teachers in this. One of my greatest teachers, because they didn't come from great circumstances. Mine, in comparison, very rosy. I won't go into any of it. But learning what affects them, because they're like mirrors. They mirror it all back to you. And I could see the pain that he was going through, certainly, was something that I'd gone through for different reasons. And boy, did it taught me a lot, a hell of a lot, and he had that fierce independent streak, and he's off doing his own thing now, and he's off to college, and he's doing his thing, and that's superb. But the day Well, it was one of those flukes again. I tell you what actually happened. The day we got the phone call, we were warned about it. I was at Ascot Ladies' Day. I was half pissed.
Yeah, we'll have him.
Yeah,
We'll
and
have them all.
yeah, and we'd already been on the champagne. I'd had a gin and tonic or whatever, and they were like, gave us this phone call and said, "Oh, we think today could be the day." And I went, "Really? Oh, right, okay." And they said, "We'll call you back." And then I got another phone call and said, "Yeah, today's going to be the day. It's going to be so and so time." And I was like, "Oh." You know, it was just a wrangly, get back from school now. This is happening. And then I went to the bar and had me another gin and tonic and a Jaeger bomb to calm my nerves and sort me out. Rang a taxi and came home. And the moment was magic. Lee and I were at the window. Social worker arrived with them, and
Both of them together, both children together.
Yeah, both brother and sister. And I remember we looked out the little window, and we were like, "They're just beautiful." And it wasn't just physically; you could just see, even though obviously they were scared and all the rest of it, and it was such a whole new world. But we could just see that they just got.
This wasn't the first time you'd met him.
Yeah.
It was the first time you met him. So.
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
So again, that what you want to call divine intervention meant to be. It was the best we'd had was a phone call and a brief, and it was to be that they were going to come and stay for a couple of weeks with us. And due to their circumstances and whatever, it all turned into them staying with us permanently.
So we've talked about love. You talk about love a lot. And, when they put my children in my arms, I had that biological, I'd carried them. Was it love at first sight? And how does that love intensify as you get to know them more? I mean, how long have you been parents to them both now?
I 7 years.
7 years. So tell me how you love them differently after 7 years to that 7 years ago when you first clapped eyes on them. How has that evolved, that love?
It's, you know what? It's the same as you would expect in a relationship, because it wasn't instant, and there was stuff that we've had to work through. There's acceptances. There's many challenges. It couldn't be just from either of us just like that, because they'd had different experiences. They hadn't experienced. Hadn't experienced love in very different ways to what we would even call it. And it's been a relationship that we've had to work on. They're very different, chalk and cheese. We've had to work different ways to learn to love and to understand each other, because we decided that we wanted children a bit later in life. So they were like 8 and 9, just about, both near birthdays at the time, because we didn't feel qualified for babies. I didn't want a baby. It wasn't in our remit. Lee was teaching at the time. He was teaching teenagers. So we didn't want children that old. So it was to be over 5, under 10 sort of thing, which, stuff's happened. They've already had relationships. They've had their challenges. So it wasn't as easy as what you'd imagine of scooping up a baby and it all being that. Just that hasn't been the case. It's been something we've really had to work on, just like you would with any relationship. They didn't love us unconditionally straight away. It's hard for them as well.
Do you tell them that you love them?
Yeah.
Can you actually say the words after your, where we came from, our kind of childhood?
Yeah. And certainly before we got to teenagers, it was always good night, love you. And it was quite a routine. Now it's a bit more get off. And have to go, can I get a squeeze? Can I get a hug, sort of thing? But because of the unique experiences, there were parameters and boundaries that we had to be very careful of to start with. We couldn't just go, come here.
Yeah.
As you'd like. It was a very slow relationship and journey that we had to take all together.
Do you know what? We might do another hour. We might do another hour another day on that, because I mean, I don't think there's anybody that wouldn't be fascinated by those relationships. I mean, you've just had such an interesting, fascinating life. You're a fascinating man on all levels. And you know what? He's actually fuck funny as well, I've got to say. Tell us what you do now, Richie. Tell us what you're doing, because I know that your experience, and I'm guessing that you're going to agree with me, your experiences have made it so you help an awful lot of people. And I know how difficult it is to get people into your book, because you are one of the top people at what you do. And I'm not just saying that, it really is. You know, try and get a meeting with him. It's like, because I've sent you a couple of people and I know what the wait list can be. But what do you attribute your utter genius on understanding and fixing people? Because I know that you do it in a completely different way. Just tell us in a couple of sentences, make it clear where that comes from.
From my experience and how I approach the world and helping people now is to restore their being. Because as we've talked about before, when we come into this world, it's the stuff that happens to us. It's the stuff that takes us away from our true being, if you like, our human being, our well-being, our intellectual being. It's there. It never went anywhere. And this idea, and something I found from traveling of, I'm finding myself. It's you're already there. You're already there. It's actually getting the stuff out of the way so that you can be the being that you really are, whatever that is to you. But the stuff that gets in the way, clearing that out and just looking for a solution, not getting hung up on the problems. I've done the old-fashioned therapy where we talk about it and stuff, but now it's like, well, how are you feeling right now? Let's look for the solution collectively to solve this. And 9 times out of 10, it comes from them.
And that must have given you such purpose after everything, to know that you have the ability to do that, the extraordinary ability to help people. That is what you were sent. For me, that's what you were sent back for, as well as the kids, of course.
Yeah. I do. I absolutely love it. And it isn't the me that does it. It's the I that have had so much experience and the blessing of the near death and seeing the world for what it really is, and being able to tune into that and help people see that you tune into that as well.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a long time to recover from what's happened on this level, but I've had to go through that. And now the energy that has kept me going through that, and I've been helping people while I've been going through that at the same time, not as many, but it's the energy we can all tap into. And when
everything is energy.
Yeah. With everything. And when you when you have a fine tune, that's what it is, restoring, retuning, it changes. And it ain't something that, I'm trying to impress people with. It's not. It's to impress upon them that when you are restored, when you're in connection with your being, you can do anything.
And that's interesting, because how many people do we know that actually are in connection with the being because they believe what they're told about themselves and the world? And actually, I think that the one thing both you and I, and a lot of the people that are on this podcast, the one thing is, who's in freaking charge here? Is it other people's fears and the world, or is it me and who I came here to be and my purpose. And, you know, right back to even making yourself ill because of those unresolved issues. Do you know what? We've actually been talking for an hour. I can't suddenly believe it. So before you go, and I'm going to put all your contact details up as well. What's the happiest day of your life, Richie? What was the happiest day of your life?
I know it sounds a bit backwards, but it possibly was that near-death experience, because on the inside, I wasn't happy for many years. Many years. I was trying to be, I was looking like I was and all the rest of it, but to know the happiness that I felt when I'd connected to that source, love, and I was able to come out and look around and see it as a blessing, that has not been rivaled. And I know that sounds awful when you think about all the special people I've got in my life and the likes of Lee and stuff like. It's just, in the truest sense of answering that question, of a level of happiness was knowing that it's perfect. There's nothing that can happen to us. There's nothing that can happen to us that can actually infringe that happiness when we remember it, when we've restored it. And that's the thing now. There's nothing externally that can jeopardize. I can, you know, whatever I'm doing, whatever happens around me. And that's how I took it. It was like, I've seen that real true happiness, that real true love. And it was unshakable. And that's what I run. That's the filter I run everything through now. Everything.
Well, be somebody, be someone, not everyone. Remember your own freaking strapline. The name of this, Nick. It might be a good start. It won't be me.
Yeah.
Be someone, not everyone. You are one of the most interesting people I've ever met, and I really mean that. And you know what? We won't leave it another few years before we get together, because that has been fascinating, and I know I'm going to have you on again. So thank you for being here. Have you got anything else you want to say before we go?
Just thank you.
And thank you to you, my friend. God bless
you. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, that's it for another week. Hope you took something from that. Do you know what the thing is? If you just take one sentence that actually you learn something from, or that makes you feel better, it's worth watching. If you liked it, subscribe down here. Even if you didn't like it, subscribe down here. And I'll see you next week. Take care until then. And again, thank you.